message this morning, I'm going to be quoting Mahatma Gandhi. Now, I think it would help us to understand the quotes I'll be giving better if we would just have some background of his life. Gandhi was an Indian activist who was the leader of the Indian independence movement against British rule. He employed nonviolent civil disobedience. Gandhi led India into independence and inspired movements for civil rights and freedom across the world. One person that was most inspired was Martin Luther King Jr. Gandhi was assassinated in 1947 at the age of 78. Now, during an edition of ABC network television program, Good Morning America, several years ago, when rock star Madonna was really popular, co-host Charles Gibson interviewed a jewelry designer. This woman was marketing a new line of crosses designed by Madonna. The crosses were labeled the Madonna Cross. Among the things this designer said in the interview was that Madonna has brought a new dimension to the cross. Among the things this designer said in the interview was that Madonna, as I say, brought a new dimension. Never was wearing a cross been more popular than it was today. Gibson challenged that statement by saying he understood the cross to be a Christian symbol. Oh, not anymore. Not anymore, the guest responded. It's a fashion statement today. No one wears the cross for religious reasons anymore. Well, Gibson continued to challenge her, but she insisted that the cross was a trend of the day. You know, what a depressing thought. For many people today, the cross is only decorative. That's sad. In spite of our culture shift with regard to the cross, this morning I want to examine the meaning of another cross, the cross of Jesus. The scriptures takes place this morning outside of Caesarea Philippi, in a village 25 miles just north of Lake Galilee. Jesus had gathered his disciples around him. They could tell that this was not easy. He started to tell them that he must suffer at the hands of the elders and the chief priests and the scribes and must die. But after 3 days, he would rise again. Peter was furious. He took Jesus off to the side and began to rebuke him. And Jesus said, "Get behind me, Satan. You do not have in mind the concerns of God, but merely human concerns." Peter looked stunned. Jesus had never spoken to him like this before. Peter simply didn't realize how difficult it was for Jesus. And Jesus called the crowd to him along with his disciples and says, "Whoever wants to be my disciple must deny themselves and take up their cross and follow me. For whoever wants to save their life will lose it, and whoever loses their life for me and for the gospel will save it." Then Jesus seemed to look each of them individually in the eye and said, "What good is it for someone to gain the whole world, yet forfeit their soul?" Those are powerful words. Well, what was he saying actually to them and to us? Does this even apply to our lawmakers on local, state, and national levels? Gandhi's quote, "Those who say religion has nothing to do with politics do not know what religion is." Those who say religion has nothing to do with politics do not know what religion is. Think about that. What does it mean to deny yourself and take up the cross? What good is it for someone to gain the whole world yet forfeit their soul? Well, let's begin. Let's begin by acknowledging what it means, what it does not mean to take up your cross. It does not mean in times of adversity saying, well, I guess it's just another cross to bear. That's probably one of the most abused phrases on earth. People can't get their nails to grow right. Well, I guess it's just my cross to bear. They can't get their children to behave. Oh, it's just a cross to bear. Likewise, when wives can't get their husbands to quit snoring, well, I guess it's another cross to bear. Bearing a cross has nothing to do with uncooperative nails, unruly children, or our snoring husband. Denying ourselves and taking up a cross is a choice, we make. It's not something that is forced upon us. It has to do with discipline and hard work. It has to do with unselfishness and committing ourselves to do the best we can do. It has to do with forgetting ourselves and concentrating on the needs of others. It has to do with commitment. In short, in these few words, Jesus has summed up all of the most helpful advice of all the self-help books ever written. People who succeed in almost anything in life deny themselves and give to others no matter what others may think. You don't get to be the best in life by staying in a comfort zone. You do it by working to, as they say, sweat blood. You sit at your computer or your design board or your blueprints or your lesson plans or whatever, long after everyone has gone home. That's what it means, in the secular sense, to deny yourself. And it works. Now, some of you baseball fans might remember the name Cal Ripken Jr. Ripken entered the sports history books when he played a record 2,632 consecutive baseball games. That's a major feat. Now, most players miss a game here and there or because of injuries or the need to rest their bodies, but Ripken didn't get injured less than any other player, and he didn't need less rest. But Ripken earned national respect because he played on in spite of injuries and exhaustion. As he once said, "I want to be remembered as an Iron Man, a player who went out there and put it on the line every day. I want people to say they couldn't keep him out of the lineup." And it's true in every field of endeavor. One of the most promising areas in medicine today is gene therapy. Gene therapy is an experimental technique that uses genes to treat or to prevent diseases. In the future, this technique may allow doctors to treat disorder by inserting a gene into the patient's cells instead of using drugs or surgery. Although gene therapy is a promising treatment option for a number of diseases, including inherited disorders, some types of cancer, and certain viral infections, the technique is still considered risky and is still under study to make sure that it will be safe and effective. It is currently only being tested for the treatment of diseases that have no other cures. Still, it holds much promise and may eventually revolutionize medicine. In one of his books, Robert Schuller tells the story of Dr. W. French Anderson. Dr. Anderson is known as the father of gene therapy. Dr. Anderson has been talking about gene therapy since he was a senior in college. It was a radical idea when he first got excited about it. He notes that in his senior year at Harvard, he was attending a graduate seminar of doctors and senior graduate students. There was a session on protein hemoglobin, the pigment in blood. At the time, he was doing research work, putting genes from one bacterium into another, changing its properties. So he raised his hand and asked, "Why can't you do that in a human being? Why couldn't you treat sickle cell anemia by using a gene to create normal hemoglobin?" The scorn and ridicule in the room was obvious. He says, "This is a serious scientific meeting," someone said. "Don't be silly and bring up science fiction." So Anderson hid in the corner. And when the meeting was over, he was going to sneak out so nobody saw him. But one professor, John T. Edsall, one of the great names in science, came up to him, patted him on the shoulder, and said, "Interesting idea." That's all he said. And Anderson thought, if Professor Edsall thinks it's an interesting idea, I'm going to do it. On September 14th, 1990, Dr. French Anderson saw the first fruits of his efforts. His 4-year-old patient received the first treatment using gene therapy. This young girl had a defective gene causing her to suffer from what has been called bubble boy syndrome. Through his breakthrough treatment, Dr. Anderson was able to give her normal life. Today, there are many patients who have been helped through his work. Gene therapy is a great promise and is predicted to help many thousands of patients, but as I said, it's still in an experimental stage. Dr. Anderson hasn't made the contribution he's made to human well-being through a half-hearted effort. He could have walked away when his early critics termed his efforts as science fiction. But taking up a cross has to do with being so dedicated to a cause that you are ready to endure criticism, willing to endure persecution, willing to devote long hours in pursuit to a higher calling. People who succeed in life in almost anything deny themselves. When Jesus talked about his followers denying themselves and taking up a cross, he was talking about people who were willing to make more than a token sacrifice. He was talking about people who are willing to give their all to follow him. Another one of Gandhi's quotes, "Jesus is the ideal and wonderful, but you Christians are not like him." If Christians would really live according to the teachings of Christ as found in the Bible, all of India would be a Christian today. If Christians would live according to the teachings of Christ as found in the Bible, all of India would be Christian today. What good is it if someone to gain the whole world yet forfeit their soul? Well, the good news is, there's good news with this. All is not hopeless. Believe it or not, we still have people around who are willing to give their all. There are many who have made the ultimate sacrifice on behalf of the common good. We don't have to look far for such heroes. I think we've all felt that experience once again this past week with the news broadcasts and the documentaries of 9/11. A good example, the firefighters who rushed into the collapsing Twin Towers of 9/11 with no regard for their own safety in order to save the people who were trapped. Many of us will never forget the feelings that swept over us as we watched the Twin Towers fall. Folk singer Tom Paston wrote a song about it, which he called The Bravest. The first couple of verses go like this. The first plane hit the other tower right after I came in. It left a fiery, gaping hole where offices had been. We stood and watched in horror as we saw the first ones fall. Then someone yelled, "Get out, get out, they're trying to kill us all." I grabbed the pictures from my desk and joined the fight for life. With every step, I called the names of my children and my wife. And then we heard them coming up from several floors below, a crowd of firefighters with their heavy gear in tow. And then Paxton sings that haunting chorus. Now every time I try to sleep, I'm haunted by the sound of firemen pounding up the stairs while we were running down. That says it all. They were pounding up while we were running down. You know, there are still people today who are willing to give their all. The heroes of 9/11 is just one example, but they're not alone. As the shots rang out at the Parkland School, there were not only teachers, but also students that saved lives of others. They're still heroes. In every tragedy, there are people who step forward with no thought of their own safety. They show us what it means to deny themselves. Whoever wants to be my disciple, says Jesus, must deny themselves and take up their cross and follow me. For whoever wants to save their life will lose it, but whoever loses their life for me and for the gospel will save it. You know, Jesus especially was just speaking to special people. To special people. He was addressing those who would be his followers. In other words, he was addressing you and me. He was saying there is nothing casual about following him. You know, many times I worry that we ask so little of Christians nowadays. Come to the church when you feel like it. Drop in a small offering when the collection plate goes by you. Serve on a church committee if it doesn't interfere with your favorite hobby or television show. Is this what it means? Is this what it means to deny yourself and take up the cross and follow Jesus? I don't think so. I don't think so. Another one of Gandhi's quote, "I like your Christ, but I do not like your Christians. Your Christians are so unlike him." You know, not long ago, a news story came out of Pakistan, about a young Pakistani girl named Salima. Salima is a Christian who was arrested for inviting a friend to know Jesus. Her friend converted to Christianity, but after that friend started following Jesus, she was killed by her own family because of her conversion. Unbelievably, because Salima had shared her faith with that friend. So she was charged with the death of the friend. Selena is now 18 years old and has been passed from court to court, going higher each time, the Pakistani judicial system. She has been in a healthcare facility for some time, and a recent report said she is in great pain. Salima has been unable to attend court because of health problems due to being beaten and tortured by police. Since she is unable to stand and walk, her back and hip and ankles are sore and full of pain, all because she's seeking to be a follower of Jesus. Then there's you and me. You and me. We can't miss our favorite TV show. We can't afford to give more than a pittance out of the abundance in which God has blessed us to do the work of Christ in this world. I guess sometimes I wonder what's happened to us. Taking up the cross, friends, is a choice. It's a choice. Whoever wants to be my disciple, said Jesus, must deny themselves and take up their cross and follow me. For whoever wants to save their life will lose it, but whoever loses their life for me and for the gospel will save it. I am included in this. I am included. You will have to evaluate your own life, as I many times sit down and wonder myself. Are you a person who is focused on saving your life in the process of losing it? Or are you a person focusing on losing your life for Christ's sake and actually saving it? Maybe we need to trade in our Madonna crosses, a mere decoration, for a Jesus cross. A cross of sacrifice and service. Choice is ours. The choice is ours. Jesus summed up the entire matter like this: what good is it for someone to gain the whole world, yet forfeit their soul? Amen.